working on the next Wombats album.
See if you can drink 10 double rum and cokes in one night.
Gorillaz and Daft Punk doing a co-headline.
Hello, welcome to the Man Overboard podcast. Today we're joined by Dan and Todd of the Wombats and most recently Sunship Balloon, who released their second album this week. Boys, what's the reception been like for the album so far?
Our friends and family all love it, at least.
That's all that matters, really.
Exactly.
Right?
I've listened to the album over a couple of times and I'm getting this otherworldly feel. And a lot of the messaging, or at least how I'm interpreting the messaging, is there's a bit of a undertone of, is the connection between people lost in the modern age, or at least that's kind of how I've read it. Is that message purposeful? And maybe I want to ask you guys, do you feel like in the digital age that real human connection has been lost a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's definitely there. We started making some of the songs for this album during the pandemic, and it was like lockdown, where obviously human connection was kind of at a minimum, and so it was definitely at the forefront of the mind, and just sort of how much we actually need that, and how, whether it's with technology, how addicted to phones we end up becoming, and in this little world of just like ping ping da, 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 working at your laptop, whatever it is. And sometimes, and especially obviously during the pandemic, how that can lead you on a bit of a race around your own head, trying to figure out what's going on, like kind of what you need in life. You reassess things a bit, and like what's important. And I think that was definitely a moment of realizing like how obviously the most important thing for any of us is the people around you, and those connections, and that side of things, and how much more you get done with each other, and how much more positive life feels like when when you are with other people and stuff. So yeah, there was definitely an element to that.
Yeah, 100%. I got that message. Todd, what do you think? Do you think in the digital age of Instagram, Snapchat, everything along those lines, that real human connection's been lost a little bit between people?
Yeah, no, of course. But at the same time, it's such a blessing to have that medium in a way, because like it's looking at us like in Sunship, or even with the Wombats as well, like living so far apart. Like I live in Oslo, Dan's in Liverpool, Murph's in Los Angeles, and it's just like having that element of it's possible to have that sort of connection and interaction, even though you're not in the same place. But yeah, and of course, like nothing beats like being in the same room and actually being with people physically, of course.
What was the production like for the new record? Was it most of it in person, or was it a lot of it over Zoom, a lot of it over calls and stuff?
And also that's the kind of like irony with it. It's like, like we didn't actually record much together at all. The most of it was done like separately. I would start on something like a track or whatever, and I will send that track to Dan. He will then, start like writing on it, adding bits, chopping around in the arrangement. And the other way around as well, when Dan will send stuff over and I will add stuff to it, and yeah, it was a lot of it was done that way. Or yeah, it was some songs that we managed to do. Was it even some before the pandemic?
No, there were a couple of windows where all of a sudden it would open up, and then I'd go over to Oslo and record a bunch of stuff. But it was good because we ended up with like good blueprints for most of the songs, and then we get together and be like, right, we need to do this, and then some of them I went into a studio in London or Liverpool, wherever I was, and like recorded bits, sent it over to Todd. Sometimes there'd be like a little, Zoom to kind of say, what do you think of this? And he'd listen, and then, oh yeah, da, 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 da. Bit of virtual producing. And then we did the whole mixing was done remotely. I was just out in the garden in the little shed, listening to Todd mixing basically, and being like, can you turn that up a bit? Maybe take that. And we did that over and over. But again, like with the Wombats last album, we did a lot of it was done remotely, and same with the mixing. With Mike Crossy, it was kind of just with headphones on the computer and listening to stuff, because technology is so good now, and obviously that you can actually hear back what's being done in real time. makes it so much easier. So we had we kind of had gone through the process once, so it felt a lot easier and natural for us to do that, which was, yeah, I mean, an absolute blessing, because otherwise all those ideas would have just been stuck, you know, in our heads. And I mean, it took a while for us to finish it anyway, kind of because of all that and touring with the Wombats and stuff. But yeah, it would have been impossible without technology. So blessing, curse.
Yeah. Do you think that whole process itself affected the outcome of the songs that are on the most recent 2 albums that you're talking about there? Did the way that you had to put the songs together affect, you know, the end product at certain points where you're thinking, no, actually, I'd put this in there, whereas if you were doing it within a studio, perhaps you wouldn't have had the time or, like, you know, the foresight to put it in?
100%. Yeah, there's definitely positives. Like with the Sunship stuff, Todd had sent something over, and because we weren't together, I'd literally just like go for a walk around the park with the headphones on, and I could do that day after day. And whenever I felt like something was ready, send it back, and I could just tinker and mess around for ages on it. And without that, there's not like time pressure, but when you are in a room together, you kind of do end up sometimes just going like, oh, that's cool, oh, yeah, which is also a great part of the process. But
yeah, it's also like it's a lot of waiting around when you're in the same studio, and you kind of like, you have to wait for each individual things to be finalized, and like, yeah, as you say, like you can think about like changes or things you want to do like way more. There's no one waiting for you to come up with those ideas quickly or whatever, which you sometimes have to do when you're in the same room. But at the same time, if you really want to like completely redo a track and like not stick to the kind of demo template that you kind of have as a starting point, sometimes we do that. We've done that with Wombats, where we like completely change direction of a track, like the production or like the dynamics or like all of it, like, and you wouldn't really be able to do that when you're not in the same room. So you kind of have to stick to the plan, which is the template through the demo, and then roughly stick to that, I guess.
Hope that it's good enough to begin with.
Yeah.
I imagine, as you said, it gives you a lot more freedom in terms of going for a little walk around the park, being able to just have a quick listen of it, think, is this where we want to take it? And then, as you said, you feel like there's not someone sat waiting for you. If there's someone sat waiting for you, there's always that pressure. But I wanted to ask a question that we ask every guest that comes on our podcast, right? And this is a tough one. This is one that should definitely get you thinking. We get all sorts of answers. It is for your dream festival. Right. So we want a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday night headliner from both of you. The artist can be dead or alive.
We get all sorts of answers to this. We've had super groups of people, somebody's thrown like Willie Nelson in with some other people, and it's just any answer is great.
Just headliner.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can throw in some other acts as well. We're not limited to headliner.
Oh, this is a difficult one. I should have prepared this. Just at the top of my head, I feel like one of my favorite kind of like bands to see live is Radiohead. So I feel like they have to be featured. Maybe doing OK Computer from start to finish. Maybe that'll be like a good sort of, and then they can do like a bit of a best of when they come back on. That would be a cool like Friday night maybe. What about you,
buying
Dan?
tickets for that one.
You buying tickets for that? Yeah, me too.
I'd probably go. I still haven't seen Phoebe Bridgers live, so just for that, I'd like. Yeah, I think that'd be. I'd love to see her play.
She's fantastic.
Gorillas.
Oh, that's a shout.
I saw them many years ago, and it was one of the best gigs I've ever seen. So. Yeah.
What about Gorillaz and Daft Punk doing a co-headline? That'd be a good one.
Or even maybe supergroup Gorillaz.
Maybe supergroup. That could be a good one.
Daft Gorillas. There we go.
Daft Gorillas.
I know they'll be listening to this. Get it done, Damon. Get it sorted.
Yeah.
And then we need one more night.
You see, Sunday, people either want to go out with a bang or they want it to be like a calm, relaxing road out of the festival.
Weekend,
Well,
we need something Do we need something classic though? Like,
I was actually just thinking when you said calm and that, I heard Fortet's new song on Six Music this morning, and then listen to it in the car like twice in a row. So I'll go for Fortet because again, I've never seen him live, and I feel like that'd be a really nice, like, you've got a bit of a hangover on the Sunday. You just want a bit of a dreamy, like, feel to end it. So
I absolutely love Fortet.
I love Fortet as well. He's great. I'm not sure if I would put him as a headliner on the final day. Maybe he can be like the second from top, maybe.
So
and
who's
then we'll
headlining
have
it then? What's the classic act?
Well, but then again, like you already put it in the electronic sort of world there. So I don't know. But I feel like we should have had like a vintage sort of like, like someone like Beach Boys or something, like
there you go. Boys.
Fortet warming like opening for Beach Boys. Oh, what about collab?
Again, that would be so cool.
Go on, Tim. I bet you can't think of a name for that collab.
Beach Set.
Beach
That's all I've got.
I mean,
four boys. I don't know.
that is going to be the maddest like collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it. I'd be really interested.
Really
what kind
well.
of
I
songs.
can't.
Ambient songs, but then with their like some of the harmonies and stuff over the top.
Yeah, and the melodies like that. Yeah.
But speaking of classics, you boys have got some undeniable indie classics. Like when I think of the Wombats, I think Let's Dance to Joy Division. I think even Techno Fan for me is one of the like top indie tunes. What's it like for you looking back at some of those songs and that era of music and knowing that they're now played in clubs, on TV, in everyone's front room around the UK?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think one of the moments where it hit home for me was I was actually in Leeds. Are you guys based in Leeds?
Yeah, we're from Leeds. Yeah, we're in Leeds now.
And my cousin lives there. And we went out. I can't remember if it was after a gig or something, but we ended up in this like indie club under the railway lines, maybe like under a bridge somewhere.
Yes, was it Stone Roses?
Probably, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it could have been.
The floor might be a little bit sticky when you walk.
Yeah,
that
sounds like Stone Roses.
Yeah. And it was awesome. And then all of a sudden they put on like a live version of Moving to New York. And everyone in there was like singing their head off. And they might have even then later done Let's Dance to Joy Division, but from a live gig. And it felt, and like everyone was going for it. And it was like, this is a live version. Like, what is going on? And that was
mad.
Where I was like, this is so cool. And all these people that you've never met before are all there, like having this moment to this live version of the song that, it was really, it's pretty special and surreal.
Was there a moment like that for you, Todd, where you realized, everyone in practice, I'd say even in Europe, probably knows at least one or two Wombat songs at this point?
I don't know if there's a specific moment that I sort of like, because it was all kind of like we're in this sort of bubble and on this sort of like mission, kind of like just doing gigs, traveling. Like, and it was kind of like, it felt like a gradual build, really. But I feel like the defining moment for me was playing V Festival in 2007, was it then? Or yeah, I think it was that. And Killer Director has been released as was released as a single a few weeks before, and I picked up some radio plays on Radio 1, and that's kind of like been going, just been kind of like. So it had radio play basically, and we didn't really know what that meant till we played Kill Director in V Festival that year, and it was like, it was small tent, but I think it was over, it rammed, it was completely full, and people like singing along and losing their minds to Kill the Director, and it was like, okay, they know this song, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like a defining moment where when I realized that, okay, something is happening here and people actually know this song at least. So yeah,
it must be such a kind of. Oh no, go on.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say it's so nice that it's it started back then, but like now when we play those songs, even though it's 15 years later, it's still got that like energy and that response in the room that we still feel and the crowd feel, and it's like a little time capsule that to whichever album we did. It's like everyone's got different moments and different stories, and it's mad.
It must be such a surreal feeling, not only to hear lyrics that you guys have written being sung back to you, but even to the point where people will be singing along with guitar riffs and, you know, doing air drums and all, like every part of the song, people they just vibe with everything. It must be, yeah, a great feeling.
Yeah, no, it is. It's what every musician kind of dreams of, I guess. And you know, you're putting music out there just hoping that one person connects with it. And when loads of people do and they're all like having a great time, it's like, oh yes.
It's wild as well, because I feel like the Wombats, there's been a really gradual growth to the point of becoming like UK festival headliners. And I was at the Leeds Arena show. I saw your headline truck last year, and it's like I feel like it was a steady road. And some people don't even realize that songs like Moving to New York, etc., came out like 15 years ago, which is mental. And I've noticed at the gigs, there's such a young crowd as well. Like everyone's practically under 25 at a Wombats gig. There's all the mosh pits are popping off. Like I've taken friends to Wombats gigs who have never even been to a concert before, and they've had the time of their life. And what's it like to see that those old songs still resonate with such a young audience and have such a standing in that audience as well?
That's one of the things that kind of like it's surprising, I suppose, in many ways, but it's also like super awesome, and it obviously proves that the songs don't necessarily and the stories and people can resonate with it even now, like that they have some sort of longevity, I suppose, and it's not like something that was just something I was interested in mid noughties or whatever. But you know, it blows my mind. It blows my mind, and it's like, yeah, the fact that it's kind of been passed on to the next generation. You know, like we still got like the older people, like, but they maybe stood a bit further at the back and not partaking in the mosh pits. You know, so I feel like it's music that can maybe be suitable for any age, really. So.
And there's been quite a few people that we've met where it's like, you know, as you say, they're, let's say 20 or whatever, and it turns out that when they were like 5, 6, 7, 8, their older brother or even their dad was like playing the songs in the house, and it just became, you know, it was something they grew up with almost, that then it's like they've told their mates about, or you know, whatever. And it's this, as you say, it's this kind of, it's just being passed around and passed down. And I can't help but say also things like Spotify and TikTok and, you know, this whole world where like time kind of doesn't really mean anything. It's, you know, you could be listening to something and then the algorithms will kick in and play you some music that they think you might like, and you go, oh, I love this song. And you don't, you know, no one's there thinking like, oh, this is from 15 years ago or whatever. It's just they hear it and just go, I love this. Who's that band? Oh, cool, great. And there starts, you know, another journey for them with the band. But yeah, it's a mystery.
I 100% agree with the been passed down. So my brother's a huge Wombats fan. I'm 23 and my brother, well, I think he's like 31. It's bad that I don't know his exact age. He's going to hate me when he listens to this. But it was kind of a similar thing for me. I feel like it's been an institutional band in my life. The Wombats has always been played in my house, and it's just been amazing. We came to the Millennium Square gig last year with my brother, and it was exactly that vibe. There was some 16-year-olds in front of us who were way too fucked up, which was funny. And then we were kind of probably the older heads who were a bit more chill. But no, it's always amazing. Is there any plans for some Balloon live gigs this year?
Possibly, but we're working on the next Wombats album. That's like, you know, if a gigs or a tour came along that was like, you know, too good to pass up on, maybe. But the focus is definitely like next Wombats album and getting that one like written, recorded, before next year, if possible.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Well, whilst we're on the topic of Sunship, I just wanted to ask, what was the inspiration behind the name? As it's a very unique name, so I'm just curious if there was anything, whether it was just off the top of your head.
I nearly said sunset then, and that's why I stumbled. I nearly said sunset, and I was like, oh.
It's a simple story, really. It's a song from Flaming Lips called Sunship Balloon.
Balloons.
Balloons, yeah.
Yeah, so we just creatively
we really cheeky and creative there, and kind of like remove the S.
We don't need this S. Get rid of that. That's fine. There we go. So
we were sat in a cafe on tour with the Wombats actually up in Glasgow, and we were like, oh, what are we going to call ourselves? And like looking through various things online, and then it was like, oh, what about some albums from bands that we like? So we started looking through various ones and song titles and seeing if anything came up. And then yeah, we just got to that one. It was like, oh, it just kind of, and more it feels like,
It's a great song as well. You should listen to it.
yeah, check out the song, it's awesome. It just felt like it really worked for the music, and kind of, yeah, almost
And it
pushed us
means you can plug one of your favorite songs as well whenever you talk about it, which is always a win. We're in
Yeah.
a very similar scenario.
Yeah,
So
I'm glad you brought this up. I was about to say the same thing.
we're called Man Overboard because it was a similar thing. Like we wanted to create a podcast, we wanted to create a platform. We couldn't think of a name, so we were just kind of going through some of our favorite songs. And Man Overboard by Blink-182 is one of those.
Yeah.
So we just thought, well, that's a good name. No one's called their podcast that before, so spot on. We'll go with that one.
Oh, nice.
Great. That's really good.
I learned to play drums. Well, not just to Blink, obviously loads of stuff, but yeah, some early Blink stuff. I used to sit there with my headphones on, just blasting away. It was,
To
so
get
good.
learning drums by doing Travis's beats, that's impressive. That's a good
Yeah.
route to take.
But you know, when you're like 14, 15, like all those fast beats, you've got so much energy. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh.
yeah.
I absolutely love Blink, but when I played drums I was never a drummer. I won't even try have a drum conversation because I did it for about 2 months. A Travis Barker song was way too advanced for me. But I did have a funny story. So I've actually been to a Sunship gig a little while back, right? And I kind of forgot that this happened. So you guys supported the Night Cafe a couple years back, right?
No, we were supposed to, but then
Or did it not happen?
No, the pandemic came, and then those gigs were cancelled, and we'd like rehearsed
Oh.
all and everything. But did you
This
go?
has
and see
ruined
Night
my
Cafe?
story, but if I carry on, it'll make sense as to why I thought I might have done. So I did go see the Night Cafe in Leeds, right? So on the night, my friend challenged me. This is when I was like 18, so it kind of makes it a little bit more acceptable. He was like, I challenge you to see if you can drink 10 double rum and cokes in one night. And I was like, I can do that easy, no problem at all. So I did it, and I was gonna say I got to the gig and barely remembered any of it because I was because he set this challenge at like 7. Obviously, we wanted to get to the gig at what, like 8:30, 9. So I don't really remember being there. So I was gonna say I was there in spirit, but not actually there.
In spirit.
But that's yeah,
So you've been
literally
telling people that you've seen us live and not realizing that we've never done a gig ever.
Yeah. Do you know? I feel like a bit of an idiot now, but it makes sense. Like I thought, surely I'd remember a little bit of it. Maybe it didn't happen, and clearly it didn't. So
so
has there
good.
ever been live shows before?
No, we haven't done anything yet.
We did
well,
we did
that's
some
ruined
really
me.
mean like live rehearsals that nobody got to see. It was,
Yeah,
it was
they just,
great rehearsals.
yeah, we had a great time, drank lots of wine, and did we had really cool versions of the songs as well. And then
Yeah,
one
we
day,
were literally like spending like a week in London rehearsing for that tour with Night Cafe that we were supposed to do, and we were ready to go basically, and then the pandemic hit, and then everything got pulled, and yeah.
I have a drum skin like that was ready to go, and with Sunship Balloon on and the logo and stuff, and it was going to be like getting put on the drums, and it's just sat in my studio now gathering dust.
Don't worry, I was there in spirit anyway, so
there.
I listened and seen you live.
Yeah,
keep telling people that you saw it, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So if you've never performed live, do you think the experience of performing Sunship songs live would be different to performing your Wombat songs live? With the experience with the different genre and the different instruments that you've included?
I think it would be a pretty different experience, and also it'd be very much like back to the drawing board. I feel like that the early days of any band or whatever, no one knows your stuff really, and you're playing to whole new crowds, and so there's obviously not that familiarity that now with Wombats gigs. It's like we have a crew, we know everyone, like there's a real like family thing, and it's all kind of like we know what's going on.
It's also muscle memory with a lot of those songs. It's kind of like it takes like we haven't done a show for a while. It takes maybe 2 or 3 gigs before you kind of like get it back into your bones. But it's like in general, it's pretty much like we know what we're doing. But obviously for you, Dan, like with Sunship, when we were like rehearsing for the gigs, all of a sudden you like step into the front and like singing and playing guitar, and you're not like behind the drums anymore, and That's obviously would have been such a different experience.
Yeah, completely.
Like to be right up front, and
to be
there's nowhere to hide.
Standing up for a whole gig as well. I'd probably maybe I'd have to get a chair. Wouldn't be
And
used
finally, you can wear proper shoes doing a gig as well.
Yeah.
He's like been wearing the same shoes for the like his drum shoes. It's like completely like worn out.
As in the
Vans
literal
that,
same pair the whole time.
yeah,
I think
like
I've done
literally since
over 1,000
2007.
gigs. Yeah.
And when they were broken, you put new soles in, right?
Yeah. They are. I think they might have done their last gig because the bottom of them now is just like there's holes in the whole shoes, and they're barely holding it together, and it's like walking on ice. You know, there's just they're like bowling shoes now.
I mean, for 1,000 gigs though, like if you've done that, like that's good wear. I mean, my shoes end up getting like that after maybe like 3 or 4 months of wear. So I mean, that's pretty good going.
That was a good purchase.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, you need to be getting a brand deal out of whatever brand those shoes are. You need to have like a little shoe cam on the drums. Gig 1034. But speaking of so many gigs, has there been any stories whilst on the road that you want to share? We normally get pretty funny ones off people, you know, an amazing fan interaction, something crazy that happened whilst on the road. What's the best story you can tell us?
I feel like the most memorable ones often are like the proposals. So there's been a few people who've like reached out before a gig, asking if they could, you know, if we could announce from the stage that so and so has a question for so and so, and then the spotlight. You know, we've told the lighting guy before, and then they find them, and then the whole room turns around, and it's this magical moment, and everyone is, you know, it's a proper goosebump moment for everyone, and then you kick in with another song, and like the fact that people, because a lot of those people they met at Wombats gigs or they bonded through our music, so it's become a very important part of their lives. And then you know they have their first dances and stuff to some of the songs, and so I'd say that for me is
I think the one of my favorite moments on tour was like we got our tour manager who dresses up as a wombat for some of our songs. Like he at some point, this was on the third album, Glitterbug, he was coming on to the solo for Greek Tragedy. He will come up and play like, you know, air guitar on, you know, like or whatever, being like a silly sort of thing. And he always tried to surprise us about like how he would enter the stage or whatever. And we were playing this old theater in Melbourne, was it?
Yeah.
Melbourne. And so he decided to start off like from the right or the back of the venue, and then run down like the whole the whole like, you know, what was it called, like the
aisle.
The aisle, yeah.
Okay.
Run to the front, and then he was going to jump onto the stage, and we see him like coming running, and then right in time for the solo, he's stepping up, not realizing it's a music pit in between where he was stepping up and the stage. And obviously he's got this like massive costume on, and with a head you can't really see very well through it. So he just steps up what he thinks is the stage and just falls. I think it was nearly 2 meters down into the music pit.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone's just like, you know, like, you know, hoping that he's okay or whatever. And it's like, it's this moment of like, and we just continue to play, but kind of shocked. And everyone's like, what happened? And then eventually you see the head come up. Then he managed to come up, put the head back on. And then like, as the song finished, he's finally up on stage and he's just stood there like, you know, and yeah, I don't know. There is a video of this on our Instagram, I think.
Yeah, and you hear
so you can
someone,
actually see it.
We saw someone showed us footage and afterwards, and it was like you hear someone go, "I hope that bear's all right."
What's it like the shows in Australia in comparison to the UK? I know you've got a huge fan base over there, and Aussies are known to be a little bit more mental. I know UK crowds like to claim to be the best, and maybe don't diss them too much. That might not be the best idea. But do Aussie crowds live up to the hype as well?
We're really spoilt over in Australia. Yeah, like the crowds are amazing. But I have to say, the UK, in terms of how wild things get, I don't think there's another country in the world that is actually as wild as like UK crowds. For like mosh pits, crowd surfing, you know, people in wheelie bins at festivals and flares going off, and like, you know, just the chaos you see in general. I feel like the UK does like take the trophy. But no, Australia is it's insane. Yeah, it's just like same as in the UK where it's just a big sing along from start to finish.
It's quite a cultural thing in the UK to like absolutely lose your mind at a gig, and I've been to some of the most what I would consider tame gigs and still seeing people going absolutely insane for no apparent reason. And I think it's just there's just a certain energy whenever you enter a venue in the UK. It's kind of like a little bit electric, and you think something's going to go off here. Something's going to go off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
there's no place like it in the world, I think, in terms of touring. You don't really get that anywhere else.
no,
It's
also,
very unique.
Yeah, the love for music, like it is palpable in the UK, isn't it? You know, it's such a big part of so many people's lives, and like how much it means. You know, like when people are singing along, it's like every word is just they're just going for it. And I mean, we've had people moshing to Little Miss Pipe Dream, like on our first album. It's a really slow song. I'll never forget. There's like a little mosh pit still going on, and obviously the lads moshing were probably just probably like you after 10 double rum and coke. Didn't even know what the song was, and they were just like, "What?"
Just there in spirit.
Yeah.
I feel like I've proper played myself with that story as well. Do you know what the worst thing about it is? I was doing research earlier and I actually tried to find a video of you playing in Leeds. And I thought, oh, someone just like no one must have put it on YouTube. I thought it definitely happened. The post is still on Instagram. And then
he was telling me before this podcast as well. Go, oh no, don't worry.
I was like, yeah, I've got a good story for this.
They were great. They were great.
So good.
Great gigs.
I did see the night cafe in Leeds after 10 double rum and cokes, and from what I remember, they were great. So at least it was kind of true, and it linked up pretty well. But speaking of wild times,
I've had nights at Glastonbury, honestly, where I couldn't have told. I remember seeing like the start of the gig, and then I don't know what I saw for the next 4 hours, but I know I was out and about with people. But so
yeah, sometimes they're the best nights until you wake up the next day and you're worried about what you did instead of like, oh, I must have had fun. But speaking of wild times, I wanted to ask you about the formation of the band. Obviously, it was back in Liverpool at Liverpool Uni, wasn't it? I imagine that you were all going out a lot. It was a pretty mental time in life. How did you meet, and when was the decision made to become a band? Because I imagine it wasn't a simple decision.
Well, no, it was really because, you know, we were in Lipper actually. Although I was in Liverpool Uni when we actually started, but me and Murph started doing some acoustic stuff together just randomly after a big night out, and made a song about a goat. And when we were like, let's go and play down in an open mic at the Cavern in Liverpool, so we did that. Thought it was fun. So you know, just started making more and more songs, or helping each other out on other recordings that we were doing in Lipper. So you had to make songs for things, and it'd be like, oh, will you come and play guitar on this, or will you play some drums on that? And little by little, we just got more and more like musical buddies. And then it was like, oh, we should start a band. And then Murph said, yeah, cool. Well, when I start in September, doing the full degree course, like try and find a bass player or something. And sure enough, he called me and went, oh, there's this Norwegian guy who's up for playing.
Couldn't find any better. Just had to like, yeah, just picked me off the street.
The first guy that
outside heebie-jeebies.
Was it outside heebie-jeebies?
Yeah, it was heebie-jeebies that we met. Yeah, that's when
I feel like I need a backstory as to what heebie-jeebies is.
It's like
what is it?
Proper. It's like it's a nightclub. It's like full on like they got several dance floors. It's like over 3 floors kind of thing, and
like an indie club, wasn't it? Basically.
Yeah.
Was it anything like what was that alternative? Madhouse was it called?
No, the Crazy House.
Crazy House. That's the one. Yeah.
Honestly, I was in there every weekend from 16 to 18 without fail. Everyone in our school, honestly. Oh,
yeah, I remember going there a couple of times, and it was definitely something else. It was experience again. Yeah, I'd call it that.
Very sticky floors.
Oh yeah, unbelievably sticky. Yeah.
When was the moment when you started out making music where you thought, oh, we're actually really good at this, we need to like knuckle down, get an album together and see where it goes? Or was there never really that moment?
We were like
New York was
we were in uni, you know, like you're in uni, it's very carefree, you don't really like overthink these things, you know, like certainly not in the beginning. It was just like we were just, I remember though, like we were very productive, and it was like 4 new songs every other month or every month, even, like, you know, it's always like new, and we recorded everything, and it's like it was a constant progression, I would say, as well, like from actually starting off like sounding pretty bad to actually like quickly starting to sound much better, and you know, like and then
Developed a
by the
bit of a like sound, you know, you start going like, you find your feet and you go, okay, no, this is kind of who we are now.
It takes time to like do that, and I think, like, you know, you can't really set off like with all these ideas, and you know, it's better to make it sort of like happen organically, I suppose, which is what it did with us. And yeah, obviously, like, we were doing all the music as well on the side. You're in this kind of like, I don't know, carefree environment when you're in uni, and you kind of like, yeah, you don't really think too much about it. And then obviously, like, the last year when it's kind of like always getting close to like finishing uni now, like that's, I guess, when we started to really pick up the pace a little bit more and started to do gigs outside of Liverpool, and that's when we had our first radio play as well, Radio One.
Yeah, that's when I dropped out of uni.
Yeah, and Dan decided to drop out of uni because you had to go to France or something to do your last year or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so that was the only way to keep the sort of band going, I suppose.
I think
so
around that time as well, you get your first radio play, and you start thinking like, oh, this, you know, this could actually like be something. And then, you know, dropping out of uni was kind of like a right, you know, commitment. Really want to make this work. Let's do it. And as Todd said, then we started touring around the UK loads, playing to like 5 people in, you know, Newcastle or whatever on a Wednesday, and driving back home, and just doing that more and more and more until it really started feeling like, right, come on, we're doing this. And we just all had this motivation, and, you know, all the other projects we were working on kind of started just, we gave less and less time to them. And it was like, right, this is the project that's, you know, this is the band. And it just felt like we were unstoppable.
I think the evolution of your sound is interesting. Like you were saying there, that it takes a while for you to find yourselves. But then the difference between the first Wombats album and the second one is, I wouldn't say substantial, but you definitely took a different shift while still maintaining the general feel of what the Wombats were. I was just curious as to, like, your process in doing that. Did you make a conscious effort to make the music feel similar, or were you just vibing with it? Or
Now, we probably made a conscious decision to try and make it as different as possible, but inevitably,
none of those songs made the album.
no, but I mean, like, you know, we introduced like synths and different keyboards, and like trying to make the sound different. But probably, again, it's happened many times where I've, you know, played a new song to a cousin or a friend or whatever, and like, oh, and in my head I think this is like a total departure for us, and they go, oh, this really reminds me of your first album, you know. So we're the worst judges of that. And I think you have 3 people in a room, and somehow, yeah, there's an energy, and you know, Merv's voice is so distinctive as well, I guess, that it's like people just hear it and go like, oh yeah.
And the lyrics as well.
The lyrics and stuff. But yeah, every album we feel like we've taken a bit of a departure from the last one. That's the aim, at least.
And how did it feel going into this Sunship album then? It's obviously a completely different venture, more of a side project, if you will. But I suppose, is there maybe a little bit less pressure there to please as many people, or to try get as much radio play, or to try do etc.? Does it feel a little bit more free, if that makes sense?
100%. I think that's the reason these kind of project, or the reason Sunship Balloon exists, is that is for us to have an outlet where we can be a lot more free creatively, and you know, like, we can have an instrumental track, you know, we can do like different styles on the same album, you know, like it feels like there's less kind of like not necessarily limitations, but there's more opportunities to kind of like go wild and be a little bit like self-indulging if we want to, you know. But you know, there's still kind of like songs with, you know, with the pop structure, and there's still like, you know, like songs that aren't that far removed from the Wombats necessarily, but then there's others that are very different. So yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's just like an outlet where we can just do a lot more. You know, yeah, it is, yeah, more free basically.
The music videos had a very otherworldly feel as well. Where was the direction
Yeah.
taken on them? I had to look through them all earlier, and it felt very dystopian.
So Marta Brodacker, who did like the first album and loads of stop motion kind of videos, which we loved, and she really like delved into the songs and like, you know, without getting necessarily too much background on it, would come up with like what she felt, and then we'd talk things through. And when it came to this album, it was like, oh yeah, she's just, you know, we've got such a good working relationship, and sent her some of the songs that we were thinking about. And she was the one that came back and said how inspired and intrigued by lots of the AI programs there are out there, in terms like for creating videos. And to be honest, like myself and Todd, obviously not video directors and don't have a clue about what's actually out there and what's possible. And you know, she was just so inspired by it. It was kind of like, listen, if you're, we'll trust that you are going to make something that you're happy with and that's really interesting and cool. And she did. Like when the videos came back, it was like, what the hell is this? Like, it feels like something you haven't seen before. And and again, all the like alienation and like loneliness and disconnect and stuff, and especially the song like Real Human, kind of having that question like Blade Runner, almost like, are they replicants, or, you know, are they human or AI or robot or whatever it is? She really wanted to like focus on that feeling and like try and create a bit of a thread through them all. And it's just really cool. Like, I think the best music videos, same like Greek Tragedy is one of my favorite ones that we've done with the Wombats, and I feel like that just brought like a totally different edge to the song. You know, when you see the video, it's kind of like, oh, you start questioning like, what's the song actually about? Even though it's not about a stalker, it kind of just gives you a different narrative maybe and a different angle to look at the song. And it's really like, Marta did such a great job with that. And yeah, but she wouldn't tell us exactly how she did it, because she was like, I'm using a few different programs and processing things in different ways and blah blah blah. And it was like, yeah, I'm glad you know what you're doing, because I don't.
Yeah, I don't think there's any need for her to keep it from the world though. Let more people create videos like that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely you know, a side to it in which the generation of what it's creating can be seen as art in its own regard. So it's interesting to see, you know, an artist actually use that in a way to support another medium of art, because obviously your music is a separate one. So to see those two working in parallel so well is, you know, it's quite an experience.
Yeah, and I think like there's a lot of obviously conversation around AI, in just in society as a whole and the future of humanity and stuff. And there's loads of positives and, you know, things to be a little watchful for maybe, and make sure that humans shepherd things in the right way. And I feel like this is on a very small scale. It's like a really good example of how Marta, with the budget she had, like working on her own, would never have been able to create those images that she kind of had in her mind or wanted to explore. She wouldn't, you know, you would have needed a team of people working on computers or artist boards or whatever, that would just be impossible for people to achieve, you know, go back 10 years or whatever. Someone sat in their room would not have been able to create something like that. And it's kind of the same music has obviously already got there a bit with how technology's opened up the possibility to create and to record for people sat at home. You know, go back to the 90s and all right, you had 4 tracks and stuff, but you would, you know, you needed to pay like hundreds of pounds a day to go into a studio with engineers and all the rest of it to actually be able to record your song. Whereas now you can sit at home and like get a pretty good recording going in, you know, in no time on like not that expensive equipment and stuff. So it's kind of it's a stepping stone in the visual medium for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's even crazier concepts that people have been using it for. Like, I think the other day I saw somebody did AI to make Homer Simpson sing Despacito, which I thought was a pretty interesting use of it. But it just goes to show, you know, the crazy like application that the technology has.
It's quite scary. Like when you see something and you question, is this real, or, you know, is it not? You know, like I think that's kind of the scary kind of part of it as well. you know.
Definitely, it's a weird one. I'm excited and nervous to see where AI is in a few years. I don't really want to see where it is, but we're definitely going to find out. But speaking of doing things out at home and how much that's progressed, the last Wombats album was produced with you guys in different countries across the world, pretty much, or at least some of the songs were. What was that experience like, having been able to record all the other ones in person and then having to record some tunes for the newer one in different countries?
It was a learning curve for all of us. And, you know, as we sort of said before, there are positive aspects and negative. Like, the good side is that you can spend loads of time on your ideas without having to sit through someone else playing like 20 bass takes or 20 guitar takes, like tweaking, you know, the treble or, you know, like messing around with sounds. Like, you know, Murph can do that for ages and then send it back, and you haven't had to sit through it. So you've got fresh ears. So your judgment's like, oh, actually, yeah, that does work really well. And the fact that we were in different studios kind of gives each of the tracks that we recorded like a slightly different sound that then when they all came together, you know, actually worked really well. So I think if we hadn't have had Mark Crew like being as organized as he was, I don't know if we would have kind of had the same experience, but he did such a good job at like keeping us all and keeping all the files, more importantly, like in the right folders and all together, and kind of shepherding us through it. It actually worked out really well. But yeah, I'm, to be honest, like with hindsight, just really happy with how it turned out, and it feels like quite a proud moment in a way to have made the album and made it kind of as good as we wanted it to be, even though we weren't in the same place. Like, it was a good experience.
I guess we wouldn't choose to do it that way again if we had the possibility to be in the same room, you know. But we know that if we kind of like needed to do something after we finish in the studio, it's like, okay, we can do stuff at a later point, send it over, you know. It's kind of given us some tools and ways of doing it where it's that can be helpful, I suppose.
What was the moment like with that album? Obviously, it was your fourth album to get a UK top 10, but it was the first album to get #1. What was it like when you knew that you had that #1 record for the first time after making so many?
Pretty amazing moments. We found that we were in Washington, DC, about to start a US tour. And it was like the first tour we'd done in like 2 or 3 years after the pandemic. So we were all like buzzing to be back on tour again and playing. And to find that out was, we woke up, we went down to the lobby and they'd sent the like #1, you know, little trophy thing. And it was just obviously it's just numbers and it's kind of arbitrary, but at the same time, it feels pretty mad. Like we were all just made up that finally we got there, and we've still got a fan base who, you know, want to support us. And
you can say that it doesn't matter, but like at the same time, when it, you know, like every musician and artist sort of like, you know, hope and dream of getting a #1, it's like it's just one of those things. Although it's not like, you know, the most important thing, you know, but it was definitely like a you know, a special moment for us as a band.
Just before we round this off, I just wanted to know if you guys had anything in particular that you wanted to promote, any message that you wanted to put out there for fans to listen to.
All I'd ever say is just thanks so much for listening to anything we've ever been involved in, and thanks for your support.
Listen to the new album.
Well, have a listen to the new Sunship album, like for sure. It's that'll mean a lot if people took the time to do that.
Go check it out. It's out everywhere you listen to your music right now. There's not a platform it's not on, so you've got no excuse not to listen to it. But thank you so much for your time, both of you. I hope to catch up again, hopefully in person, if there's any more live dates for either band coming up soon. But yeah, thanks for your time.
See them live finally, maybe.
Yeah, I might actually, if you see me in the crowd, I might challenge myself and see if I can do 10 double rum and cokes again.
This is the point where I'll try and convince you this podcast didn't happen.
No, don't do that. I've had no rum and cokes today. That's impossible. But yeah, thank you so much, fellas. Hope to catch up again soon.
Nice one.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.